At the time this went down 4 months ago, my wife, 35, and I, 33, had been married for 2 years. I was scheduled to go on a 2-day-long business trip, leaving extremely early one day and returning the next day in the evening. Well, after 5 hours of driving, the trip was canceled. I wasn't terribly bothered because I was used to driving and would be compensated for my time. I decided to return home unexpectedly. When I arrived, I was surprised to see another car parked beside my wife's. It was her brother's car. He was a buff dude, married with a baby that my wife would often babysit. She loved it because she looked forward to becoming a mother. Her and her brother were really close and enjoyed hiking. It didn't matter what the weather was like. All year round they would go on long hiking expeditions together. I didn't mind, it was their thing, and I was not an outdoorsy person. I'd usually work a little more or dedicate time to my hobby of building miniature boats. Although I fully supported their relationship, I became a little weary of my wife's brother when he became exceptionally emotional at our wedding and planted a huge kiss on his sister's lips. I couldn't do anything about it, it happened so fast. He asked me to forgive him later, blaming what he did on the high emotions he felt seeing his sister get married and leave the family. When I arrived home and parked behind my wife's car, I could hear slow music playing loudly. It was an odd setting to imagine my wife and brother-in-law in. I didn't have to imagine it because I walked in on them slow dancing together. He was holding her close to his body. Their embrace was that of a romantic couple's. When they noticed my presence, they broke apart quickly and looked really guilty. I knew my marriage was in jeopardy by their expressions. My wife tried to say her brother needed emotional support because his marriage was struggling. To me, that did not explain why they were slow dancing in my living room. As hard as it was, I didn't ask them any more questions. They were aware of how odd it looked. I didn't have to wait long before my wife went to go babysit her baby niece one day. She accidentally left her phone behind and I found her WhatsApp. It revealed that she was sexting her brother, sending pictures, saying I love you, and arranging hookups with him by claiming she was going to babysit. It was the most disgusting and disturbing discovery I ever made in my life. I threw her phone and ran to the bathroom to be sick. Everyone always assumed they were really close because they had trouble making friends when they were younger and shared an enthusiasm for hiking that no one else in the family did. I wouldn't confront her about it immediately because it certainly wouldn't have stopped them. I realized that I was just the cover husband so she could have a secret sexual relationship with her blood brother. I went back to her phone as I boiled with anger and betrayal and took screenshots to send to myself. I planned out my revenge, which involved a bit of acting on my part. It was excruciating to see her behave so normally when returned home, like she didn't just hook up with her brother behind my back. I too acted as though everything was normal. I laid awake beside her that night in our marital bed. The very next morning, I hired a PI to get me photos of them. When I announced the truth, she wouldn't be able to wiggle out of the consequences. Not long after, she claimed she was going on a hiking trip with her brother and I played along, notifying the PI. He called me late that night and notified me that she got hotel room with her brother along the beach a few hours away. I started packing my things because it was only a matter of time before I got pictures. I didn't know why they weren't actually hiking together this time, but I didn't care either. At this point, I didn't care about anything and just felt numb. I received pictures of them walking on the beach and boardwalk like newlyweds. His hand on her butt, full kisses on the lips, staring into each other's eyes over drinks at the bar, both of them entering a hotel room, clearly in a romantic relationship. I was ready to leave, but before I left, I invited her immediate and extended family and friends over, including her brother's wife and baby. I printed large copies of the pictures I received and hung them all over the house, starting at the front door. On my way out, I left a note on the door instructing them to let themselves in. Little did they know, I left town for my friend's house with all my belongings and no plans to return. They called me after they entered home, frantically asking me what those pictures were. I spelled it out for them on speakerphone. These two members of the family were incestuous freaks that have probably been in a sexual relationship since they lived with their parents. Then I told them where they currently were if they didn't believe me and wanted to see for themselves. Hours later, I got a call from my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was screaming and I could hear the chaos in the background. It became clear that her entire family and a few of her friends had shown up at their hotel. Her brother was being beaten by cousins and the hotel called the police. She asked why I did this to her, and I told her she deserved it. She had been living a lie that she wouldn't be able to continue anymore. I told her the divorce papers were on the table and she started wailing, so I hung up. I was hurt enough as it was and didn't want to dwell on how her life would turn out. Her mom called me a few days later to apologize on behalf of her daughter and son. She updated me and said the police never arrived at the hotel, so hotel staff started breaking up the fight themselves. In the chaos, the brother and sister fled to escape scrutiny. The whole family was a wreck for a few days, but things are settling amongst them now. The wife of the brother is filing for divorce as well, along with custody and child support. Before they fled, neither of them signed divorce papers, so that's a waiting game for now. I'm relieved this was all exposed when it was, because I can't imagine continuing that relationship any longer without knowing the truth. I just want to put this all behind me and I feel like I'm on the right track. I found a nice place and continue working for the same company I was in. I'm continuing to take this one step at a time. This whole thing is still so surreal for me,